So now you should be hearing me. Okay. Good morning. I found myself distracted. I was listening to Brother Banting, and then I got distracted. Time went, and schedule clicked. So, okay. So I actually still got a minute. Yeah, the early bed. I'm not the one who is late. Okay. Good morning. Latif Ubujere. I see you, Tochuku. Welcome to service this morning. And let me make you laugh before we get busy with Nigerian wahala. So, sometime back, I started having this inkling in my spirit that I'm going to end up behind the pulpit. And a few people also told me, oh, you are going to end up behind the pulpit. So I started laughing. Me, I'm not so conceited as to think that I have anything to teach anyone stood behind the pulpit in a church. So it was always very easy for me to dismiss that thought that me, church, pastor, God forbid, is not happening. Because I know exactly how carnal I can be, and I know that I'm nothing, I'm nothing like anybody's pastor. So I always batted it off. But recently, something struck me. You know, when you're going through moments of self-appraisal, I was going through this moment of self-appraisal in recent time where I'm asking myself, is it even worth the stress? I come up every Sunday, I stand in front of you, I put on a camera, I turn on the lights, pin on a mic, and I'm talking to you. And when any one of these social media platforms would describe me, they'll say content creator. And I always felt insulted. Me, content creator, I haven't monetized any of my social media platform. I don't earn anything from doing what I do on social media. And here they are calling me a content creator. So I found that rather depressing, you know. And I was asking myself, what the heck do you mean? Yeah, people take my lectures, they splice it up, and they edit and do all kind of things, and a whole lot of you reach my work by virtue of these content creators. These are the persons who are earning money off the back of my work. And I'm fine with that. The important thing is that they are spreading the message. But to get called content creator always bothered me, and it pisses me off to no end. And then recently I was speaking with a friend, and she pointed to, I was lamenting about how I'll do all this work and I'll find sometimes less than 10,000 of you would bother to watch, but I'll see the same video somewhere else and the person is averaging 200,000, 300,000 views. And I'm the one who is getting called a content creator. And it was in the course of that discussion that something struck me. Your pastors are going to be called to different pulpits. Some people are called to pulpits in the temples and churches. Some people are going to be called to the marketplace, and some people are going to be called into the public intellectual space. There is always going to be someone who will speak the truth in whatever space that may be. This is my space. So welcome to church this morning. This is my own church and this is my pulpit. And I have a faithful flock. Some churches in Lagos, mega pastors, they don't have the flock I have. So the question is this: the flock they have that has been incapable of impacting the society they pastor, I don't want you to be the same ineffectual flock. If I'm indeed a pastor and you are my flock, it then means that I am feeding you with a message of liberation. The totality of your value is in your capacity to preach the same messages to the persons in your own space. Leave it if you believe that these messages are the truth. Embody them in your own space. Do your own bit. Don't be like those who are before some pastors this morning hearing all kind of nonsense and who will come out to tell us all kind of nonsense. Because let me ask you, if your salt cannot make the soup tasty, if salt has lost its saltiness, exactly what you use is that salt. The Bible says, by their fruit you shall know them. What is your fruit? What is the fruit of this gathering? Before Monday, I know that by the end of this week, I would have at least 8,005 to 10,000 of you faithfully watch these videos. When you're done watching, what do you do with it? That is what makes the difference. Our capacity to influence our environment. You are my environment. I'm not going to reach the places you are physically, but you are there. What are you doing with it? Hmm? So welcome to church this morning. Or maybe we'll find another word for it because they've so bastardized the word church. It's become something for religiosity, vacuous religiosity. We'll find a name for what we do, but suffice to say that this is the school of citizenship. Welcome to class this morning. But as usual, we'll start with the week that was. I must commence the week that was with the subject of Justice Crack. I consider Peter my son, and I'm talking about Peter Aka, but I'm a little crossed with him because I'll be speaking from a better informed position if I had managed to speak with him over the course of last week. And I did try to reach him, but I guess he was too busy with the nonsense that has been stirred up by the Justice Crack episode. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I rarely ever have anything to say about any other human being. If I speak about a person, I'm only speaking to types. I don't speak to personality. I'm no saint. I don't demand the same from any other person. All I ask is that we at least let modicum of sense attend our endeavors, both in our private and in our public spaces. I don't have the full facts. And even if I had all the facts, it's very unlikely that I'll speak to persons. So I'm not going to speak to persons. But everybody who is involved in not having had that bail application heard should bury their heads in shame. Our ego, however high, should never be the basis upon which injustice would fester. It must never be. It must never ever be. Ever. It must never ever be. It's a show of shame. It is a complete show of shame. And it bespeaks a complete absence of leadership in the upper echelon of those who presume to speak on behalf of the people or even to fight on behalf of the people. As I have said, I do not have all the facts, and even if I did, it is very unlikely that I'll speak to persons. But I am loath to say that nobody would appear to have covered themselves with any glory in this sorry episode. Let us all endeavor to do better. I don't want to say more because I don't want to aggravate the situation. There is this terrorist that has now been killed twice in Nigeria, Minuki. The Nigerian government claimed, the Nigerian army, I should say, since it may very well deny that it is part of the Nigerian government, claimed that it had killed this same human being. last year. No, not last year. I believe that was actually 2024. The same person is the one being killed again in 2026 by the Americans. I have a brain that questions, asks questions, and add things together. And I'm asking myself, are there two Minukis? Are the two Minukis simultaneously holding posts within the terror networks? Or was somebody providing cover for Minuki in 2024, protecting him when it was said that he had been killed? I speak to the things that happened in the week that was, not because there is a shortage of madness to use as reference, but because some of them are particularly useful in opening windows into what is going on in Nigeria. And the Aminuki killings open such a window. How did we come to find ourselves in this situation? You can ponder that. How a whole Nigerian army will positively identify a person as being killed, and the same Nigerian army just cooperated in killing the person 2 years after. Think about that. Ọmọ ẹni ò ṣèdí bẹ̀bẹ̀rẹ̀, ká fìlẹ̀kẹ̀ sí di ọmọ ẹlòmíì. Indeed. Àwa ló kàn. Indeed. But I asked the question at the time, if you say it is our turn, what do you mean by it is our turn? Our turn. The appropriation of our in the name of an ethnic nationality in promotion of personal interest. The acceptance of that madness by those who should have known better has led us today into a situation that is our turn too for Islamist terrorists to be abducting children in Yoruba land. In the week that was, buried in the news of the Boko Haram kidnappings in Borno State, there was also a report of 3 different schools in Oyo State having been visited with children abducted by the Islamist terrorists. When you remember the fact that Katsina State, Buhari's home state, is today more or less a bandit wasteland where the government constantly pays ransom to terrorist organizations. When you consider that, and you now think back, Buhari is gone, and Tinubu will be gone one day, as will I, as will every other human being who breathes. But the madness we have engendered by our refusal to focus on solutions, by our acceptance of distractions of ethnicity, religiosity, in the sacrifice of competence, we're already harvesting it. Apparently, what was in Katsina has now come to Oyo State. And it's just a matter of time. It's already everywhere. It's not just Oyo State. It's here in Lagos State. It's in Ogun State. It's everywhere. Nowhere in Nigeria is truly safe because the state has lost its capacity and it has no willingness or political will to resolve the problem of impunity that has battered terrorism. 8 policemen were dismissed in the week that was for complicity in kidnapping. Imagine that. Your policemen. And in the week that was, Nigerians did what was hitherto considered impossible. You actually got the World Bank's attention by telling them not to lend to Bulaba and his 40 thieves on Aduware. Social media can be a rage bait sometimes, but it can also be a force for good. Maybe we should consider doing more of such things in the future. All right, it's 10 o'clock now. Good morning, everybody. Because I figured that by now, there are some people who wouldn't have been with us earlier on, who don't mind my gaggle of geese. They are the ones making the noise you're hearing. So this morning, I've chosen for myself a subject, and I title it, it is easier. What was that title again? Because the truth really is that Nigeria is a case study in pain. And yeah, Nigeria retaining hope in a hopeless place. Think about that. Retaining hope in a hopeless place. You know, on Wednesday morning, I made a post on my social media platforms, and it came from a place of very deep pain. Some of you recognize that pain because a few of you did reach out. In fact, the one that I found funniest is a dear friend in the ranks of the Orange Morons. I'm sorry, I enjoy provoking my friends. He is in the diaspora. You know, I'm their favorite person to bash. My friends love bashing me because, of course, I have a different pathway in mind to the Nigerian revolution. And since they are the custodians of the revolutionary pathway, I usually get a lot of bashing from them, but they're still my friends. So one of them called me from the diaspora, and I saw the first call. I ignored it. I didn't want to talk to him. I wasn't interested. I was in too much pain to be interested in speaking with someone who is coming from amongst a collective that I believe. I don't want to criticize anybody. Let me just say that these are persons with whom I should ordinarily have found ideological um, comfort, support, but we always tend to disagree on the pathway. So when this person was calling me, I wasn't too keen on talking to him. But he called the third time. He was quite persistent. So I was now worried that I hope something hadn't happened to someone. So I picked up. And he started comforting me that I shouldn't be despondent. He encouraged me, even though he didn't fully understand where I was coming from with what I had typed. So let me share what I said that morning. I said, every word rings back as echoes of yesterday's lamentations. Every word rings back as echo of yesterday's lamentation. Every protest as a scratched record. There is nothing new to see here, and nothing that should be said that is left unsaid. But nothing ever changes in this land, and my tired is now tired. That was on Wednesday last week. I was speaking from the depths of my pains when I typed those words. The nauseatingly unchanging nature of the challenges. There is a Greek myth of Sisyphus. This is of a man that was doomed to rolling a stone uphill. I sometimes feel like that in relation to my life. I feel like the same stone that I've been seeking to roll uphill for the last 41 years of my life, almost 42 now, is the same one that I'm still rolling. The challenges of living in a country that is not ruled by law and that is completely yoked to impunity, where I'm not a citizen. That has been the yoke all my life. And Everything that I should say, I have said. Everything that I believe I could do or should do, I have done. And nothing seems to be changing. Now, if you read those words without the benefit of knowing the things I know about what needs to be done, and we'll come to that in due course, you would come to the same conclusion that my friend who reached out came to, because it sounded like a man at the end of his teters. But far from it. Far, 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 far from it. And I say far from it because as nauseatingly repetitive as the cycle is, and I'll show you how repetitive it is. Nigeria retaining hope in a hopeless place. This is the second time I'm preaching this exact topic. But there is a difference this time around. When I was preaching it the first time, about 3-4 years ago, no, about 3 years ago, I was preaching it from a point of not knowing what should come next. I was preaching it still confused about the pathway forward. And that confusion began to show for the first time when I was delivering a lecture at the CDHR program in 2021 or thereabout. And I realized that the more I spoke to the audience, the more they seemed to be waiting for me to tell them what's next. So it became clear to me that there is nothing we were going to say that hasn't been said. There is nothing I'm saying today that Bekor and Som Kuti didn't say, that Fela didn't say, that Gani didn't say, that Awolowo didn't say, that Aminu Kano didn't say, that Chike Bono didn't say. People have said these things ad nauseum. But nothing has changed. So Nigeria begins to look more and more like a hopeless place, because every time you appear to hope, the hope is extinguished. In the lead up to the 2023 election, there was something that I said amongst many things that I have said. And it seemed at the time like an hyperbole. I said that Peter Obi represented the last opportunity for Nigeria to have a peaceful transition from a destructive old guard to a new generation of leaders. That it was the last chance. Like many things that I will say, I say them not because of a prophecy that was seen, but based off objective deductions from salient facts and truths. It was clear to me that to install the person that was coming would have to be against the sovereignty of the people. It would have to be because the constitution would have to be subverted and the will of the people would have to be thwarted. And that was exactly what happened. And as we run up to 2027, the more you look at the directions of travel, the more it will become obvious to you that the likelihood of a free and fair election is impossible. Is like describing the chances of a snowball in hell. The chairman of the electoral body is overtly partisan. So how do you retain hope in the possibility of democratic change through a process that you can markedly see as being compromised? There is a nauseatingly predictable cycle, and it would appear that every opportunity for change has been rendered impotent. I say these things and I come across for a lot of people as being insane. And I have also found that it is easier to get you to listen if I admit to insanity. So a lot of times I've told you, I'm mad, don't worry. You are the sane ones, I'm the insane ones. When I told you nothing will happen to Magu on national TV, a lot of you thought this madman has started. What happened to him? Nothing. Yeye Bello, after all the shenanigans, strolled into EFCC. That was about the same time that I was being led in handcuffs to court. For doing what? For telling the truth. I was led to court in handcuffs because an example must be made of the truth teller so that others are careful about telling the uncomfortable truth. Before I infected the society, I must be separated and punished. Some of you, lawyers, SANs, justified it. Some jokers went on national TV justifying my incarceration. How do you help that other people will join tomorrow? Yeye Bello is sleeping gleefully in his house. That despicable El Rufai is in prison. I'm not advocating for El Rufai. I'm merely pointing out what Nigeria tells you when you look, what you see if you bother to open your eyes. The Lord does not matter. How do you retain hope in a hopeless place? How? Exactly how? That Diata was murdered with impunity. We have had persons come into the public space, two now, the one that was Matawale's aide and El Rufai, who started with blowing the whistle on this. What has happened? Inspector General set up a panel to investigate what? Exactly what? How do you retain hope in a hopeless place? Do you think Justice Crack would have found a different fate from that Diata if those who made noise about his abduction had not started making noise as early as they did? They would have killed him. They would have killed him. And nothing would have happened, just like nothing has happened with that Diata. The impunity that you call corruption, how does this in any way evoke hope in anybody? In the same country where everything is upside down and society has become impoverished to the point where you have over 160 million Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty, you have your churches normalizing this evil, telling people to pray to God. There is one, it was Ineo Bongudo, who even drew my attention to this madness during the course of the last week. Churches have started creating narratives in normalization of incompetence. One is even daring to say that God is the only sure political banker. They are creating narratives so that you would either have apathy or you'll be willing to accept what you are seeing. Mosques and Islamic clerics are no different. They've become the point of normalization of evil to the point that they are the ones who enthrone this evil. How do you retain hope in a hopeless place? Exactly how? How? You have Christian clerical fraudsters shaping the narrative ahead of the election, just as their Islamic counterparts shaped the narrative that drove out Jonathan. refused to hold Buhari to account. He enthroned this Muslim evil. How do you have so much religiosity and then you have a society completely shorn of hope because they are always preaching to the normalization of evil? In recent days, I began to think, even the people who have evaporated hope in Nigeria are the ones who have been marketing hope. Because how do you explain a situation where Tinubu, who has destroyed every illusion of any hope, objective hope being had in Nigeria, runs on the slogan, renewed hope? How do you renew hope when you have murdered hope? And when you have done nothing to change the existential reality of the people, and you are speaking about renewed hope? You see, this morning message became even more important for me when I saw a proliferation of videos that I had made in the lead up to the 2023 election. A few of them have been repurposed and I'm seeing them published as we approach the coming election. Just so we are clear and we don't have any ambiguity, so that you have context for what I'm about to say. Let me be very clear. If Peter Obi is on the ballot as it is today, I will vote for him. There is no universe in which I can vote for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There is no universe. And there is also no universe where I'll be foolish enough to consider Atiku as being any different from Tinubu. I actually believe Atiku is working for Tinubu. But that's another story for another day, because in fact, it's not another story for another day. It's a story that must be told today. It would have been hopeful if someone like Atiku had said, in the interest of national integration and to save Nigeria, I'm going to put my support behind a new generation of Nigerian leaders. And as a demonstration of this, I'll support Peter Obi. That would have been a hopeful thing, because we would have thought, okay, here is a unified opposition against the hopelessness in our land. But of course not. There is no Nigerian politician today that sees a Peter Obi administration as being beneficial. So the Nigerian political class, as a class, as a collective, regardless of what affiliation they may have, would not see a Peter Obi presidency as being beneficial to their interest. So yes, I will vote Peter Obi in 2027 if he is on the ballot. That is one. But having said this, 2027 and 2023 are two different things. What happened in 2023 would happen in 2027 if there is no difference in the approach in 2027. I am not going to, as of today, as we speak, I have no commitment beyond my vote, because I have a different pathway forward. Now, when you look at our society, the totality of where Nigeria is today, the putrefaction that has eaten deep into every facet of our national life, the compromise of our national security on the back of political expediency, the complicity of the political class in the subversion of our national security, the compromise of national security by politicians who have funded terrorism and been protected by the system that they have created, the destruction of the Nigerian military to the point where it is no longer capable of securing the Nigerian state, the compromise of Nigerian sovereignty to the point where the Nigerian citizen has become the Nigerian victim. All these are necessary issues in my own view, and I have not seen any ticket mobilized to deal with them in the manner that I believe they should be dealt with. On account of this, I'll stay with my vote. I'm not going out to canvass for anyone, but I am saying to each and every one of us that if we must retain hope in a hopeless place, it will be because we built our hope on substance. And that substance must be the change that promises a different future than the one that we are dealing with today. We are more than them, but we are separated by many things. And these things that have separated us, we can only resolve them when we build bridges across the divides. These bridges can only be built with ideas. They cannot be built with personalities. Personalities might provide temporary bridges, but persons die, persons evolve, and it must be beyond persons. It must be about ideas. Ideas endure beyond our lives. If we do what we ought to do by building viable bridges with ideas, then it becomes possible to put all of us together as a collective. We are more than them, but we must build the bridges in order to reach ourselves. Weeks ago, in fact, let me confess, months ago, when I first started toying with the ideas that I believe might be capable of binding us together, I did everything I could to get there via shortcuts. I announced to you guys about the ICE platform. I told you about the ICE platform that I thought we could do quickly. I thought we could build it like yesterday. But what I found very quickly is that aside from the technical challenges that we have faced in building the platform, and that is without prejudice to the many of you who have reached out offering help that we haven't taken. What I have found very quickly is that beyond the technical challenges, there are also intellectual arguments that are to be made in engaging if you are not going to carry guns. I preached a message long ago. I think you guys should find it again. I said your PVC or your gun. If you are not going to be carrying guns and you are going to be carrying your PVC would have to be aligned with a weaponized brain. A weaponized brain means a brain that is armed with ideas. The pathway to harming you with ideas is the construction of the platform that we are constructing. We have the technical part ready now. The site itself is ready. You'll be able to register to be members. What we're trying to build is a broad-based political organization, a mass movement. We need to rebuild falling walls. This is how we retain hope in a hopeless place. The student union structures that have been destroyed, we have to revive them. We have to revive student unions in the universities. The trade unions that have been largely destroyed, we have to find ways to build parallel organizations within the trade union movement. The market women, we would have to reach out to them. I can't do that alone. When I was starting out today, I reminded you, if this is my own pulpit, you are my congregants. You are the ones who would have to take on a lot of these duties. What I'm trying to provide is a platform from where we can all begin to act. We're putting together the final piece of that puzzle, and that is what we call the social contract. The social contract, if you remember my preachments from some weeks back, I spoke about the social contract theory repeatedly. You can't speak about citizenship without speaking to the social compact. The social contract is essentially that thing, that agreement between those governing and those who are being governed, between the state and the citizens. I believe the absence of a Nigerian social contract has led to a complete abuse of the Nigerian, to the point where the Nigerian, instead of being citizens, have become victims, legally victimized. So I believe that we have to build the walls, get a critical mass of us to understand what it means to be citizens, and then get them to demand citizenship. In the absence of substance, hope is delusional in a place like Nigeria. The top president is speaking about how you should not demand development if you are unwilling to pay tax. But he ignored that you should not demand tax if you are unwilling to be accountable. If you are not accountable to those you are taxing, what you call tax is essentially a ransom. It's not tax any longer, it's ransom. When you can unilaterally, as the president, award contracts that did not go through any tender, for which there was no budget, and then the budget itself is not implemented, but you continue awarding contract to a company in which you have interest and your son is a director, and you are still talking about tax. That is not tax. That's ransom. We are your hostages, your victims. We are not citizens. And when you are talking about not asking for development if we are unwilling to pay taxes, I think you should rephrase that. I will not be derailed. The key thing I need all of us to understand is that the only way you can retain hope, substantive hope, in a place that is hopeless, because Nigeria is structurally and realistically hopeless. But in the absence of hope, the human spirit is left with despair. And the ruiners of Nigeria will prefer that we despair rather than that we hope. Hope is a dangerous commodity. A hopeful people do not submit to slavery. Never. They do not ever submit to slavery. You will never find a hopeful people speaking in the terms of slaves. And that is what Nigeria would appear to prefer. So I say to you this morning, we must retain hope in a seemingly hopeless place. But that hope would have to be built on substance. I will continue this lecture next week, but it will not be with this topic. It will be me telling you, may God spare all of our lives, that we are more than them. That's my subject for next week. My topic, I should say, for next week. We are more than them. And I expect that before that date or on that day, we will go public with the website so that you may commence the process of registration. It would also allow us to introduce the social contract to you. That social contract is inclusive of a draft constitution that will be sharing what we view Nigeria should look like in that future. As much as possible, we would use that website to educate ourselves. First, to inform each other, to challenge orthodoxy, and then to educate ourselves. More importantly, we hope it will be the basis upon which a call will be made at some point in the future. That enough is enough, because we certainly cannot continue in this fashion. Whether it is Peter Obi that is sat in the office of the president of Nigeria, or God forbid, Tinubu, The demand will be no different from what is going to be contained in the social contract that we'll be putting forward. It's not partisan. It's an idea for how we can find our way into a future that our children may be proud of. Like I said, it is not partisan. It would be the fulcrum and basis for every demand going forward. And it has nothing to do with who is in power or who is not in power. I'm not interested in a change of regime. I'm interested in a change of this system. In the absence of a revolution, which is what I'm asking and looking for, in the absence of a revolution, Nigeria will still die. You cannot maintain this country in its current form. And you cannot maintain this country normalizing this impunity that has come to govern it. Enough is said for 1 week. I will see you next week. You can hear my flock also protesting behind. I've had more than enough said today. I'll see you next week, and our subject for next week, we are more than them. And that's the truth. If we'll stop dividing ourselves, if we'll find common purpose, we are more than them. A dear friend online just posted something, and I would not miss the opportunity to use that to close. I'm sorry if I told you bye-bye, but I'm compelled to come back. He said something about the inevitability of death. So I'll use that to explain something. My dear friend, Shino Ogunlano, he passed on a little over a year ago. In fact, it's gonna be 2 years. That's how quickly time flies. He died, I think, 10 days after his 60th birthday. But I noticed that there is a short clip that was taken from one of his public interventions, where he said, "Oh, lówó lọ́wọ́, oh, lóògùn, kí ló fẹ́ fi dẹ́rù bọ́mọ aráyé? Wàá jìyà pẹ́ńbẹ́ o." He was exhorting you, he was exhorting all of us in Yoruba language that we must not give up on life to the point where we are accepting of every evil that happens in our space. The fact that he's gone today has not stopped that message from reaching places he never walked to in his life. Ogunlana is long gone, but his words continue to live. I do what I do, happy in the knowledge that everything I'm saying to you today, the things I've said years back, long after I'm gone, you're going to be listening to them, because the truth never cloys, never ever cloys. The truth is the truth is the truth. God bless you all. Death is inevitable, but the truth is immortal. Dare to tell the truth. You'll be amazed at how you become immortal. Ogunlana is immortalized by the truth he told. I look forward if the death looks back. All right, everybody. Have you a beautiful week and enjoy yourselves. Bye-bye.